It's always important to identify the toxic traits that you have picked over time in life. You see, you could either be from an environment that is toxic, where there's a family, or a relationship, or marriage, or even being a child, or being a parent. It could also be from the workplace. It could also be from um, social media. It could be from a religious institution. Whichever place you choose to look at it, toxicity is all around us. And we are all shaped by the environments that we live under. For example, if you live in a place whereby there are industries that are all around you, as much as from the economical side of it, there are jobs, the health side of it, for example, if they're producing chemicals or any product that releases any type of chemicals that is hazardous, the people within that environment become affected. So whether it's cancerous, whichever way it may be, that environment, as much as it benefits economically to be able to put food on the table, health wise, it does affect you. And over time, you'll either leave the place or be laid off. Whichever way you look at it, you are now left to carry the illness that you didn't have when you got into that job. But because two things shaped that: the environment, that's the environment where the industry is located; two, where you're currently living close to that environment, because it's always wise to live close to where you work. That's what we always say. That's so that you can try and cut off transport cost. But what if we are close to somewhere where they are releasing toxic chemicals? By the default of you being there, you're always breathing in the toxic chemicals. So why use such an example? Because that is the same as toxicity in everything. The closer we are to it, if we are not careful and cautious to pick the toxic traits that we've been under over time, just like the industry and the health hazard that it produces to people, the same shall be. Remember, if back to the industry as an example, as it's producing these hazardous products and you're getting paid for the job, or let's say it's your spouse or a family member who's working and you're living within that environment, as you're breathing in, you might not have the ailment immediately. It will be slow and progressive. Cancer doesn't come, for example, immediately. It's slow and progressive. Whichever ailment it is, slow and progressive. When that person who is working in that industry comes home, whether they're supposed to clean their hands or anything, maybe it could be on their clothes. And so that environment is, so it affects over time. However, if you take the same people, this remove the work and change them into a new environment, you will notice it. This is a very good example, even you look at families when they have little children. If they have little children in a place where there's a lot of congestion, pollution, and everything, and then let's say you notice they'll be coughing, they'll have asthma issues and everything, all you need to do is simple: change them and bring them into a new environment. Then you notice a very big difference. The child who was coughing all the time, or the adult who was coughing all the time, is not. They are breathing in fresh air. So remember, your environment shapes you whether you like it or not. If you are in an environment where it's all about fighting, shouting, and all that stuff, the fact is you may not intentionally plan to be part of it, but it will catch up with you eventually. It will. If you look at even from a theological point, you see, for Lot to find himself in the situation of Sodom and Gomorrah, all he had to do was first view Sodom and Gomorrah, be interested, be part of a community council, and was already defiled by the environment. The thing is, every environment affects us. If you sit with people with mindsets of wanting to be wealthy or opportunists, positive thinking or positive approaches to life, trust you me, you will be affected. You will start thinking. Look at the way most people end up choosing particular careers or even particular items they purchase. What do they always say? Well, I saw someone had spoken something or given a review and I looked into it, I liked it, or I didn't even look into it, I trusted their judgment. And maybe this person didn't give you a direct recommendation for or a review. It was maybe just a passing conversation. Or maybe you are serving people, like maybe you're a waiter, for example, and you are serving a table, for example, and you overhear the guest say, no, if you tried ABCD, they're just having a simple conversation, and you get to overhear, you're thinking, let me go and try this thing. You go try it, it works. Remember, your environment, being in these places where you're serving this particular table, these guests did not need to talk to you. They were having a conversation. However, in that conversation, the ideas crept into your mind. It was not enforced, but by the default of being in that environment, the ideas crept in. Then you started planning. Eventually, you come to implement it. And that is how it is. Whether in a toxic relationship, as you've built up survival skills, as you've built up different coping mechanisms, if you're not careful, some of the coping mechanisms might have picked. Maybe they are a bit toxic in its own way. If you're not cautious, you'll end up picking. For example, if you are in a situation where you're always pressed down, when you get, let's say, to find a partner, you'll always want to be the one above that person. And that person, you might find, may be more relaxed. They're like, fine, they understand where you came from. But they're not going to tell you directly that your actions or your intentions make them feel uneasy. Because before, you're always pressed down. Now you find someone who has given you a leeway to do whatever you feel. Now, without you noticing, you are trying to go above them. Not noticing that now you are affecting the next person who wasn't. And they may not even tell you, because either they are thinking, if I tell you, they've already seen your history, or they know your history and they know how it will affect you, so they let you slide. I always use these two types. There's one example I always use when I want to challenge someone, even challenging myself. You have a king sitting in his throne, and he has two servants. Outside the camp, outside their palace or kingdom, there's an enemy encroaching. The king asks these two advisors, go, tell me, what do we do? First advisor says, hey king, you are powerful and mighty. This person who's outside, you have the military capability of dealing with them. Relax, eat, dine, don't bother. The second advisor tells you, king, you are mighty, you are powerful. However, I would advise you, please let your security, let there be a proper protection of the kingdom. Put scouts, put all the right people, and let's be very cautious to their movements within the kingdom, because just because the enemy is outside doesn't mean he does not have most inside. Fine. So the king decides. One has called him powerful and told him nothing can happen to him. The second has called him powerful, but has told him something can happen and given good recommendation. So king sits in his throne, decides to follow the first advisor, and boom, he gets attacked. What do you think he will do to the two advisors? Definitely, the first advisors, and let's say he escapes from the wrath of the enemy, the first advisor, he will either imprison, execute, or definitely something bad will happen. But the second one, he will promote, because the second one gave a recommendation. Now, why am I bringing such an example? Because when someone cannot tell you the truth and is not open to tell you the truth, they are no different from the first advisor, because they're giving you all these recommendations. You're good, you're ABCD. They're not telling the actual truth, maybe because they fear what you hold. Maybe you have money, so that means you have some level of power, or maybe emotionally they are the kind of person they want, so they can't really tell you the truth. Now, the day you get to be challenged by someone who's different, what do you do? It's like when dealing with kids. What do we tell kids? You are the only one, they're more beautiful, you are the smartest. They go to school and they realize, yeah, maybe they're not that mad. There is a competition. So what am I trying to say? We need to be keen and careful with the type of life we live. The toxic traits we pick affects us. If in a social media, for example, you may be having a platform where people are throwing hate, you do have a choice to filter out the comments. You do have a choice to even remove some people if your feeling is uneasy, or filter out the type of feeds you don't want. We have the power if you are honest with yourself. But this takes one person to look deep within and ask themselves, for how long shall I be like the one I hated? Remember, the abuser creates the victim. The victim can turn into a survivor or a worse abuser. It only takes time. And sometimes the abused or the victim just becomes an enabler, and eventually they become an abuser. Let's be very honest with ourselves and look within. Learn from what we've gone through, pick up what is positive, drop what's negative.